Hi, everyone. I'm Kate with the Creative Coast, and welcome to Lunchtime Topics. This is a weekly program of the Creative Coast during which we feature a business expert who shares their knowledge with the coastal Georgia startup and innovative small business community. Topics cover a range of subjects from marketing to best HR practices and areas like public speaking. So this is your first time, welcome. The Creative Coast is here to serve the tech and digital entrepreneurial community of the coastal region. We do that through educational programming like Lunchtime Topics and providing connectivity and offering opportunity to the startup community here. So today, we are excited to have Victoria Baylor back to speak at Lunchtime Topics. Victoria, you spoke back in August, I believe, and that was on creating a magnetic brand. And that was such a great talk. We had to have you back. So today, Victoria, who's a mindset and clarity coach, she's going to be talking about tuning up your personal brand. So something that often we don't think about, especially when we run a business. We've got a million other things going on, and that hustle and bustle of doing business, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and all the like, they often neglect their personal brand, resulting in, some issues. And according to Victoria, she's seen that erode some foundations of businesses and performance and confidence. And when you're running a business, you've got to have all those things. So in this training, she's going to outline the 3 C's of personal branding to help you tune up your personal brand so you can maximize your impact, visibility, and income to gain the success you desire. So Victoria, thank you so much for being here. We're glad to have you back, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Caitlin. It's always an honor, of course, to be here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Let me know if otherwise. And I will go ahead and just share my screen. And of course, good to see everyone. Bernice, Lou, I see Jen there. Of course, again, pleasure, Caitlin. And let's get this thing started. Okay, so it's funny, after I looked at my write-up for my talk, I was like, whoa, boy, that came in hot and heavy there. So right off the bat, if you know me, if you've heard me speak, you know that I bring a lot of passion when it comes to the topic of personal branding. But really, as my title says, I'm a mindset and clarity coach. So really, there is no personal brand without clarity. So really, my focus is on having that clearness of thought, understanding who you are, and really being able to infuse that into your personal brand and help guide you towards your goals. So the question here is one, just kind of make you think, do you need a personal brand tune-up? So let's jump into this, see what the answer is for you. Okay. Let's see if it's gonna be nice. There we go. So why should we care about personal branding? That's a question. And I think Caitlin, of course, set it up nicely. If you're in business, you already have a good sense of what your personal brand is. But I kind of want to give it to you from a different perspective. Let's talk a little bit about it. Let's imagine, for me, just do a little bit of, let's transpose our thoughts a little. Imagine if I offered you a week-long stay at this amazing place here. Let's just pretend it's in California off the coast somewhere near Big Sur. And look at it. It's this amazing, very contemporary style house, has a pool overlooking the body of water with mountains in the distance. I don't know too many people that wouldn't be takers, right? Most people would say yes. So if I offered this to you, of course, all expense paid, you don't have to do anything. But there's one stipulation. Stipulation is you have to get there through my mode of transportation. So if I offer you this as your means of getting to that destination, let's pretend you're in Georgia. That's where I'm at right now. So you got to go all the way to California in this. Now, I'm not one to judge cars, and I'm one of those people, I will ride my car 15 years. So it's not a matter of age, it's a matter of functionality. And I imagine with this car not having a windshield, that might be just one of the problems you may be experiencing. And let's not think of all the other potential problems there could be. So my question for you is, do you feel confident about getting to your destination in this vehicle? Anybody, just, you can nod your head, shake. Anybody feel confident? No, I wouldn't either. So what's interesting about this is this really does tie into you and your personal brand. When you really think about it. Oh, someone left a comment. Let's see. I think someone left a response. Yep, there's a no there from Bernice. So this really ties into the way we think about our personal brand. And I like to elevate and sometimes shift the way we think about things, because we can get into a habit of considering them so mundane in our approach that we forget kind of the real gist behind why we're doing what we're doing and what we're doing it for. So here in this case, if you think about it, you're off to a destination as well. We all have a path to where we're going, and that can be different from each of us. I want you to think in terms of, where are you headed? What are your goals? What is it that you're hoping to achieve through your business, through your connections with people, by doing the work you do? It's a destination. And it's so important when we think in terms of a destination. Okay, what is your vehicle for this destination? That's important. So again, just like in this case, and I know someone just jumped on, in this case where you can have an amazing destination, but if your vehicle is a little bit challenged, you might need to think about how you're going to get to your destination in a better way. So that kind of shifts the way we think about personal branding, because your personal brand is your vehicle for success. So that's the way I like to look at it. It is your vehicle to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. It's those connections you make. It's the, the work you're trying to do. It's all of that, which I'll go into a little bit later, but it's your vehicle essentially. So the question I have for you is, what condition is your vehicle in? And I don't like to start talks off like hot and heavy and feels like I'm throwing like lava snowballs at you or anything like that, which that would be very interesting, lava and snowball all in one. But what I'm saying is that it's important to think about, because of, if you consider 2020, like 2020 for a lot of people was enough to just kind of knock them off of their where they were out of their seat essentially. So many unexpected things that kind of hit them. So if you think about that idea of having a vehicle and being involved in a collision, 2020 was like a collision to a lot of people. So I think today I want you to kind of look at this talk as a way to kind of really just, if anything, help you just to see where you're at, and if anything, kind of invigorate you and empower you through knowledge to see if there's some dents in your vehicle, or if there's anything that needs to be buffed out and shine, so that you can get into proper working order and head to the direction that you want. So again, questions to think about are, where are you headed? And then, can your personal brand help get you there? So personal branding, as we know, and I think most people, if you're familiar with it, I won't go too far into it because most of us as professionals know what it is, and entrepreneurs is, it's your reputation. So it's your image. It's how people experience you. What can people come to think? What do people come to think of you? What's their impression of you? And it's your value. So it's like a lot of unique elements kind of rolled up into one big thing. And in a way, it's really ethereal. So, you can't kind of like touch people's personal brands, because if you're thinking about an impression, oftentimes you can't touch an impression, but you can feel it. And that really does go back to that adage of, when people interact with you, they can tell sometimes within the first 3 seconds who you are as a person. They're picking up vibes. They can tell by the way you speak, eye contact. They can tell if you're being truthful. So it's so important to kind of have a personal brand that aligns us and who we really are and the value that we want to offer our clients, so that it's easier to connect with our clients. You don't want to try to connect to your ideal client and then have those difficulties in place where they're not perceiving you the way you want to be, because that's going to just affect you, your bottom line, your ability to connect, and everything attached to that. So simply put, your personal brand is what people really think about you, when you leave the room. And I love that Jeff Bezos kind of described it that way. So what are people saying about you when you're not in the room? And that will be a huge determining factor. Because if you think about brand advocacy and having those people that are advocates for your brand, that's what you want. You don't have to be in sight, but you're constantly having people say great things about you, and they're really supporting your cause and promoting it. I mean, you can't pay for that. That's amazing. So when you have a great personal brand and you're making those connections, and you're really clear on the value you provide, and you're connecting with your clients, the opportunities are endless. So we all love perks, right? And this is just a reminder that when you're in good working order, a lot of great things you'll just naturally attract in your personal brand. So you're going to attract your ideal clients. You'll become known as an authority. When you position yourself right, you attract opportunities. You can gain referrals, get higher premiums on your services, and then of course build a loyal fan base. So all of this is, again, based on what are you putting out there about yourself and how are people perceiving that? And it's so important. I like to think of it in terms of if you went into a cave and you yelled hello, you don't want to hear the echo back say goodbye. I mean, you know something was off, right? Your personal brand and what you put out there is almost like an echo. You say a word, you want it to echo back the way you're putting it out there. And if it's not, you know you need to make some adjustments. But let's not forget about the most important side of personal branding. So I felt a little mechanical when we think of it as, okay, there's the transactions, what you put out there. It's not that way at all. Your personal brand is actually personal. And this is the part I think that matters most. And this is actually what makes me a mindset and clarity coach, because to me, and the way I see people, anybody can fake a personal brand. You can fake an impression. We've met that people, right? Like that. You can fake a persona. You can fake and put out something and get a certain reaction. But the best connections are the authentic ones. And one thing we know about acting is that you kind of can't keep up a charade forever. So why not create a genuine connection and allow people to see who you are and what you truly have to offer, and then connect that to the people that need it most? Because in the end, relationships trump every other means in which you try to connect with people. It's funny, I had a dentist appointment today at 8 a.m. and I was talking to the wonderful woman cleaning my teeth. And she was talking about the dentist and talking about how amazing she was. And it was funny, I just flat out said, yeah, dentist is the main reason I'm here. I mean, there's like 100 dentists in my area, but I love what she does. I love her gentle touch. I like the way she interacts with me. I love her and her excellence in how she does her services and offers them. So it really is a relational thing. And if you think about the connections you have with people and the services that you actually can, use, and the people that provide for you, if you're really serious about it, some transactions are one-offs, they're really quick, doesn't really mean much, but other transactions actually go deeper. You're connected to the relationship you hold with the people, and therefore it maintains your loyalty. So if you think about the tiers that it takes to create those connections, it's important to have that know, like, and trust factor. And research really shows that when it comes to knowing someone, it really does take between 5 to 7 touches or impressions to really get a sense of knowing someone and remembering what their brand is, what they represent, having that awareness locked in. And then that like part is 89% of shoppers really do stay loyal to brands that share their values. So imagine what happens if you don't really know what your values are and you're promoting yourself, or you're promoting what's worse, is just a product or service, product, service, and not utilizing yourself to help ramp that up. Then what's going to keep people from walking away from your product and service and straying to somebody else that offers the same thing? So it really is about going deeper beneath the surface and generating that personal touch. And then there's the trust factor. So 80% of consumers purchase based on recommendations from other people that they know and trust. And I'll be honest, especially as a mindset and clarity coach, I get a lot of recommendations just from people. And if you think about it, instead of trying to hard sell folks, there's something to be said about when people have a transformation they're excited about, and then they share it with others that want the same transformation. It just really helps to seal the deal on your expertise. So why am I obsessed with you? And yes, I'm absolutely obsessed, but in the best way possible, because I really do believe in the brilliance of people. And I believe that, again, products and services are great, but it's really the people behind them that make them fantastic. And if you put two people in the same space that offer the same product, same service, same price, same discount, same everything, but you have two people selling or serving, the difference would be those two people. So if you think about it, personalities, what are these elements that people have that they can actually use that really will help heighten their personal brand and put it in a favorable light and connect with people more? So my job is one that I really, really love, is to help people gain clarity, get confidence, make more revenue. One thing I've noticed is that just across the board, people underestimate the gifts and the abilities that they have. And when they do that, they leave tons of money on the table. So I'm a bit of a strategist. And because I'm analytical, I love to see what people's gifts are and to help go in there and then create a strategy out of that where we can expand their value and help them be able to serve more and at the same time be compensated for their value more. It's a win-win situation, and it's a match made in heaven, so to speak. But more importantly, why are we in any of this or doing what we do? If you think about the bigger picture, it comes down to, for some purpose, it comes down to other people really finding their place in this world. And for me, it's really about helping people achieve their bold dreams and visions. Like, what do you envision for yourself? Remember, we were talking about that destination at the beginning? Like, where do you see yourself? Sometimes we can see things as so far in the distance, or we can see so less of ourselves that we can't connect the dots. Clarity allows us to connect the dots, because half the time, I bet you were working with far more than you're giving yourself credit for. Because in the end, we all want to live a fulfilled life and leave our mark or our footprints in the sand, so to speak. So I'm also here to tell you something as well that I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way, is that just promoting what you can do is not enough. You definitely need a personal brand. And having a personal brand without having true understanding and self-knowledge just leaves you a hollow shell that's performing, doing, accomplishing, but not really gaining the fulfillment and connectiveness that you need for yourself to thrive. And I know that personally, because when I was 8 years old, I decided I want to be a marine biologist. And I was one of those people, and didn't notice it then. I come up with a goal. I didn't really see any obstructions. I was like, we're going for this. And that's what I did. I was obsessed. I ran for it. And I went, I graduated high honors in high school and college. I got an internship when I was in college, working full time on research, which was crazy, being that I was undergraduate, traveling all over the world. Here in this picture, I'm standing on the Chukchi Sea in Barrow, Alaska. It's frozen, thank God, obviously. And it's in the spring, so I think it was -10. But I was there. I took 4 trips, so I was there when it was like -45 at times. So I was doing research. And then at the same time, the middle picture is I also discovered I could actually make really unique clothing and garments. And I had this creative side. I was like, oh, well, how did that show up? And because, and I discovered that kind of as a whole separate story. But this put me in conflict with myself because I had no idea who I was. I was always used to performing, doing, going. And because I was a perfectionist, I robbed my own confidence because things were never good enough in my mind. So I just kept pushing, going. Didn't accept my own accomplishments. It just had to be more and more and more. And eventually it just eroded my own self-identity. So bottom fell out for me and I had to go back to the drawing board. But being that I am highly analytical, that's what I did. I did what I did best, was figure out, who are you as a person? And then that's when I discovered that after I dug myself out of the hole, I really discovered what my gifts were and what I was capable of. And then I realized that when I look back, there's a lot of women out there like me. There's a lot of men out there like me that get stuck in what they think is what they're supposed to be, and then they lose themselves. How do you really find out who you are, tap into your brilliance, and then create a personal brand that allows you in your business to connect with people authentically and do it in a way that fulfills yourself and fulfills a need? So that's what I do now as a mindset and clarity coach. That was the best breakdown of my life. It wasn't back then, 10 years ago, but it is now. And it's because I love getting to help. So because I shared my story and because I tell you what the foundation of personal branding really is, it's about looking at yourself as one of your greatest assets. Let's do just that. When it comes down to really looking at yourself and going beneath the surface, you have to ask yourself, who are you? And we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later, but we're talking about brand identity. It's about bringing in all the necessary elements that are important to really understanding you. Your values, your beliefs, your experiences, your story, your genius, brilliance, personality, all these things that are those intrinsic elements and these external experiences or ways in which you see the world that are really important in shaping who you are. And the problem is, I always like to say, is that we tend to group ourselves. I always use the analogy of fruit. If you have an apple and an orange on a table, what we tend to do is like characterize. If I ask someone, what are we looking at? They're like, oh, it's just fruit. That's like saying, when we think about business, oh, we're all just in business. But let's look a little deeper. We have an apple and an orange. When you start really analyzing the differences, that's when you start to see the unique elements. An apple is something you can actually, it's a fruit with the skin you can actually bite through. You know, it has seeds in the middle. When you look at an orange, it's a textured surface. You can't bite through that. You don't want to. That's, I remember you're a kid and you tried that. It's not really flavorful. You want to peel it, and then it's segmented naturally. And then you start looking in, and then the juice is different and the flavor is different. We as people are the same way. So when you really start peeling back those layers, it is amazing the tools that you can add that will really propel what you are trying to accomplish in your market. So remember, your personal brand is personal. So once you figure out who you are, you can better able to understand what makes you valuable. And again, that's why I love when I coach, it becomes so easy to show people their value and their confidence like skyrockets, because they never got to do part one. They never really did that deep dive that's necessary to see what makes them different. Because one thing about personal branding, if you think about in your marketplace, which is saturated, I think they said we think, if you look at the math, well, if you look at statistics, and what I quoted is probably a little dated now, said about most people are inundated with about 30,000 messages a day. So if you think about it, you grab your cell phone, you're scrolling. And one time I didn't believe it, so I did the math. If you think about what you see, even in 3 seconds of scrolling, it's a lot. So my question for you is, when someone's in the habit of scrolling, what are you putting out there that's going to make them stop? What are you saying? What are you showing? And if you're watering down yourself, it's not going to make them stop. So you want to ramp up yourself, right? Okay, so what makes you valuable is looking deeper and taking those elements of part one and creating that message, that brand value. And then how do you communicate that? And we haven't hit the 3 C's yet. We're kind of dancing around it, but I wanted to give an overall picture of you as an asset before we start looking at empowering yourself specifically in those 3 C's. But then communication. And these are only just a few bits of ways to communicate, but there's so many different ways to communicate who you are. So that's really important too. That's why it's so important to have a brand strategy, because hitting and missing it is not going to get you to your destination. The car might be ready to go and it might be loaded up with gas, but if those spark plugs are old, what's going to happen? You might have a breakdown. So it's so important to make sure that you are revved up in the best way and tuned up in the best way. So let's peel back the layers, because I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking that, oh, she's just making this sound so easy. Like, oh my gosh, all I have to do is do an internal deep dive and all the good stuff is going to come up. And I'm here to tell you it's not that easy. Because as I disclosed earlier through my personal story, it was, my external environment was never a problem for me. Even being an African-American woman in being a minority in a field where there's very, very few of us, even that wasn't a problem for me, not in my mind. But what was always my prison was my own thinking. Is my own confidence, is the way I saw myself, is the way I minimized myself, it's the way I was not good at giving myself credit. It was a way in which the imposter syndrome, I'd let that overtake, or it's the way in which I didn't want to sound dumb if I said something because I'm in a room full of other people. What if I look silly? The things that I never had an issue with when I was younger, those issues just have a way of creeping up in life and we don't notice. And then slowly but surely confidence begins to fade. So I'm here to address, because I am a mindset coach, so I have to do my due diligence. But what makes it really hard for us to see ourselves is the blocks that we have here. And a lot of them are subconscious. So if you think in terms of 95% of your thinking is conscious and only 5% is subconscious, or I'm sorry, 5% is conscious, 95% is subconscious. There's a lot that runs through your mind on a daily basis that you might not be aware of. What if those are negative messages that are playing on loop? And you can always tell. So I want to kind of encourage you to think in terms of mindfulness, watching what you think today. This is my challenge for you. Think about the next task you have to get done. I want you to observe your actions. Say, for instance, you have to give a phone call to someone you're trying to do a collaboration with. It's been on your to-do list forever, it just keeps rolling over and over. When you go to pick up the phone, I want you to pay attention to what are you thinking as you're picking up the phone. Are you hearing things like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe I'm going to catch them, they're too busy for me. Maybe this isn't that important. Well, we don't have enough research done. You can't go now. Wait, hold on a second. Wait, put it off to next week. Because those kind of internal mindset issues really keep you from really stepping out and owning all that, those amazing elements and that brilliance you have that's going to enhance your personal brand and keeps you from leading with it. So if you're dealing with, and I like to say this in the most, of course, loving way possible, because this is just real stuff. And oftentimes people don't address this, but if you're dealing with feelings of unworthiness, struggling to see your value, you feel like limiting beliefs are every belief you have is just limiting you. It's not, I can go and I can achieve. It's no, I'm going to fail. This is dumb. It's important to just face those issues for one. And then second of all, and not to feel bad about it, because it happens to everybody, even people that are successful, they still deal with mindset issues. The most important thing is to connect with someone that can help you if you cannot help yourself. So definitely coaches such as myself, a mentor, someone that can really go in and see the root of it. Because the biggest thing is seeing the root cause. If you don't get the root, it's like a weed. It'll always keep coming back and it'll take hold. And actually someone has a comment. Oh, there's a question on mindset. Sure. Jen, did you want to present your question? Or you can do it at the end, whenever you feel comfortable.
I'm going to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jen. It's good to hear from you.
Good. I'm sitting outside, so I have my camera off.
No, that's okay.
So sometimes I feel I get stuck related to mindset because I'm kind of uncertain if this is truly the path I want to follow. So I'm a little bit like, I go part of the way in, but not all the way in, because I'm like, well, what if I change my mind 9 months from now and I don't want to do this? So I feel like I sometimes get stuck. Like, even though I've given a lot of thought to this new idea or whatnot, I get stuck because I'm like, okay, what if I go down this path and I decide I don't want to do that anymore? I mean, have you ever dealt with that kind of situation?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, so, we have this natural response system that wants to protect us. And I think we should honor that. And that's a beautiful thing. And I love that. First of all, of course, I love Jen's brain because she has a very tech brain. I love what she thinks. But I love the human side. Yes, we want to protect ourselves. But then sometimes you feel like that's laced with a little bit of judgment too, because it's almost like you're not allowed to fail or you're not allowed to change your mind. And some things are just, if you think about taking a trip and you go down like a side street and you're like, oh, well, I'm just curious. There's nothing wrong with, the question is, of course, seeing where things end up and how much you put into it, making sure that it's something that you can recover from. But sometimes indulging one's curiosity is not something that has to be penalized. And that being married to the outcome is something sometimes that's important to not do. Be married to how does it turn out. Sometimes it's about the lessons that are learned along the way and just shifting your mindset in the way that you see the experience. And also crediting yourself for the bravery it takes to take that path when there are questions and doubts and concerns. Every situation we get into comes with risks. Marriage, love, having children, God knows someone should have told us about those when, but and it's amazing sometimes it's not the path itself, but oftentimes it's where it could lead to. So that's a really good question, Jen, absolutely. Having that, I think it's about breaking that cycle of that judgment, and then the cycle of, if you're stuck on thinking about what people are going to think about you, or even the way you might judge yourself, I think when you can free yourself from that part, and then the results, you can enjoy the journey, and then maybe be more open to seeing if that's right for you or not right for you. And I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. That was great.
Okay, wonderful. Great question. Okay, so now we're going to move into, does anybody have any other questions? Because I'm more of an interactive person, and I just kind of laid the foundation. We're going to have some interaction in just a second. I just wanted to warm you up before I threw you in to the pool. Anybody have any other questions right now? And if you have a comment, anything that's kind of stood out to you, please feel free to share. I will watch the chat on my end. I apologize if I didn't say that earlier. Okay, so let's move on. But this is a very important part, because again, when we think about mindset, I always like to say, if I give you a visual, it's like being in a prison where there's really no door. You ever seen that? I mean, there's prisons and then the door is shut, but your mindset, when you get trapped there, there's really no door. You're just imprisoning yourself. And it's so important to to honor, again, the thought itself of what's coming up. Sometimes as women and men, we can stuff it down and try to ignore it. But it's really good to embrace, well, just embrace that, okay, I'm having this, and then gain that insight you need to overcome it if it's holding you back, again, through those connections. So very important mindset. So moving on. So now let's talk about that, those 3 areas, those 3 C's to really empower your brand. And here we have clarity, confidence, and conversation. And I've alluded to these throughout. So I'm one of those people, I do like layering. So, we learn through sometimes repeating, but really want you to get these 3 C's kind of in your head and in your thoughts. Clarity is super important to you and the way in which you present yourself and understand yourself. Confidence is super important as well. And then conversation. And if you could do me a favor, I kind of want you to just to like expunge what you think about these things normally. Because remember, oftentimes we always take our what we've learned or what other people have said, and sometimes that's misconceptions, and then we see words and then we close ourselves off to really seeing kind of the full breadth of something. So I'm going to show you kind of clarity and confidence and conversation in a way that hopefully will just kind of really empower you, because that's the most important part about it. I think we have enough on ourselves. Talks like these shouldn't be to weigh your shoulders down and make you feel like, oh, I'm underperforming and I'm not doing enough. If anything, this is a blood transfusion, or maybe even better, a vitamin fusion. I hear those are pretty good. So clarity. This is one of those interesting questions. So I gave my TEDx talk on, the title of my TEDx talk is "You Are Who You Are, Not What You Do." And as I mentioned before, I know specifically, and I know this is a challenge for a lot of people. This is why, again, as a coach, I work with people. This is a huge challenge for. They define themselves by the what they do. And that's one thing that I know is a struggle of mine too. So when people ask you, like, who are you? It's like, oh, I'm a dentist, or, oh, I'm a engineer. And then when you ask, well, if you ask them what they do and they say, I'm a dentist, I'm an engineer, and then you turn around and ask them who they are, then they kind of get confused. Well, it's like I just told you, but it's not one and the same. So clarity allows you, of course, again, to see on a deeper level. So let's kind of go a little bit below the surface here. This first question is an interesting one, because when you're talking about who are you, the question that kind of pops to mind is, do you like yourself? Because if you think of it, you can't have any clarity into who you are if you really just aren't a fan of yourself. And I know that's one of those questions that kind of makes people shift in their seats. Like, why would you ask that question? Of course I like myself. But there are times and periods in our lives where we can go through spaces where we're not our biggest fans. And we kind of resent things about ourselves. We don't like the way we look. We don't like our voice. We don't like the way we laugh after we say certain things. And that critical nature can really kill a sense of really that ownership and owning and embracing who you are. So it's so important to think about that. Do you really like yourself? Do you think you're a great person and you have a lot to contribute and offer? And when you get to those points where you can understand those questions and answer those positively, it really helps build that sense of who you are. Because if you think about it, personal branding, again, is feeding an idea and helping people understand who you are and what you can offer them. If you don't understand that for yourself, what are you really giving people? That's why it feels fake for a lot of people. Have you ever had to introduce someone and you just met them and you didn't know them that well and you had a loss for words? Who has done that? Like, I've done that. And that's just the worst situation. You're like, oh, this is Stephanie. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know much about this person. Let's flip the table on that. What if that person is you? If you're a person that struggles to talk about yourself, introduce yourself, talk about what you have to offer, that's a telltale sign you don't know enough about yourself. But instead of seeing it that way, what do most people do? They'll turn the table and say, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. I don't know how to talk about myself. How come I'm so dumb? I had the best opportunity in my life, but then I froze. No, it's a simple problem. You just don't know enough about yourself. It's a fixable problem. So do you like yourself? Do you know your values? Values are a huge, huge thing. What are those things, those elements that are very, very important to you? If you have some values that are very important to you, do me a favor. Can you drop those in the chat? We think about values, things like family, resiliency, respect. I mean, elements like that, you might ask, what does it have to do with personal branding? A whole lot. These are components that, again, if you embrace them within yourselves and they're important to you, you can actually leverage those, especially when they're a great way to connect with your ideal client. And then it's a great way to pull your ideal client in. Okay, we have in the chat, we have hard work. Yes, that's a really great one, Kate. So when people see that, oh, okay, Kate's really serious about what she does, which she is serious about what she does, everyone, and and she works really hard at it, that builds respect. And remember, we go back to that know, like, trust factor. That allows me to trust what Kate says. And there's this unique phenomenon called the halo effect. So if you can really put something out there about yourself and people see the truthfulness about it, then what they tend to do is give you credit. It's like when you go into the store, you have buying credit. So that halo effect is a way in which people just start to say, okay, if Kate is hardworking, then that means she must be dependable. Oh, that means she's on time. Oh, that means she always delivers. So you see how you want to put the right messages about yourself out there so you can really gain the best leverage in connecting with people. Someone else had something. Let's see, we have a couple more. Values. We have loyalty. Yes, absolutely. Loyalty is huge. Oh my gosh. And oftentimes it's one of those traits that when you give it to others, they give it back to you in dividends. You can show loyalty and support and that you have them and you've got their back. People are ready to do the same for you. I love that. And then part of my branding, Jen saying part of my branding is about the tough love coach. That I love that. So again, being known for something. And when people see that tough love part, and then they look at all the elements that Jen brings to it, and they know that they can trust it. And then they know, if you know Jen personally, that she really cares and she's passionate about what she does and she wants to see people succeed. In that mind, that builds an overall image that people have. And they're like, yep, she's tough love. She's going to give you what you need. That's really awesome. That's a great comment, Jen. And anybody else, if you want to share. But clarity, again, it starts with you. How do people perceive you? And you can find all this out today. Now, to go deeper, I say work with someone trained. That's what someone like me exists. Because what's hard is connecting the dots. You can know something, but putting it together and using it and creating a strategy takes work and it takes expertise. So you can start asking people, though, however, to get that ball rolling. How do people perceive you? If you and some of the greatest things to do is just ask some of the people in your circles, like, hey, when you think of me, or if you had to describe me, how would you describe me? And then, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Well, I usually like just strengths. Weaknesses, we usually know those. We don't focus on our weaknesses in a sense. We do so that we stay out of the mud, but really get the feedback that shows which direction you want to go in and allow that to really build your confidence and then put more of that out there. And if you're getting feedback you don't like, then that's a sign you need to adjust your messages that you're putting out there. A big one is, what value do you provide? What makes you valuable? And this for me is the brilliance part. Everybody is a diamond. They're multifaceted. If you think about a diamond, you can turn it different angles. You see different things. What makes you valuable? Are you looking in a direction that you're not valuable and you're trying to make that stand out? That is a waste of time. Look at your superpower. What is it that people always ask you for? What are they always complimenting you on? Because what you do extremely well is something people can't do well. And you can bridge the gap between what you offer and what people need. So always there. And sometimes people minimize that. They're like, oh, I thought everybody can do that. So I know they can't. No, they don't. So if you have a certain superpower, definitely put that in the chat. We want to talk about these things and definitely own it. So that's part of who you are. What reputation have you built? And again, getting that feedback so you can adjust your message. Next things up is, the next C is confidence, okay? So confidence is the currency to take action. And what's interesting about confidence is I like to kind of bust through myths and misunderstandings. People make confidence way harder than what it should be. And again, I just my analytical nature, I like to kind of get straight to the point and help you get there. Confidence is actually not hard. If you look at the Merriam-Webster definition for confidence, it is, as I quote, one's self-assuredness of their own unique qualities and abilities. It's like two parts to that. Your self-assuredness of your qualities and abilities. What I encounter all the time is people have amazing qualities and abilities. They don't know what they are. And when you don't know something, how can you have assurance in it? How can you promote it? So the importance about confidence is when you get to that point, again, this is where it's so important. Take the time, invest in yourself, do that deep dive, build your personal brand off of a foundation of self-knowledge. That is your greatest clarity. And that's what's really going to build your personal brand. But when you have your confidence in tow, it gives you the currency to take action. You don't have to doubt. You don't have to hold back. You don't have to second guess. One thing I notice about confidence, especially among people, I'm gonna grab a bottle as a demonstration, is that confidence for them is oftentimes a bottle with holes in it. So they pour in, they're doing amazing things. They're, achieving stuff. Oh, they got this contract. Oh, they were able to connect and do this. Oh, they became a writer and got featured here. And then it goes in the bottle. We'll just take top off. But since the bottle has holes in it, it just drains out. So next time they need their confidence, when they go to kind of access the source of their confidence, the bottle's empty. They don't feel like they have anything. They don't feel like they ever did anything. The importance is to make sure your confidence container is intact with no holes. You're not poking holes in it. You're not talking against yourself. You're not having negative speak. You're not downplaying your accomplishments. Every time you do that, you poke a hole in your confidence and you can't contain it. That's why it's so important to have a victory file. You're not bragging. As the old saying says, it's not bragging when it's facts. Have a victory file that contains all the things you've accomplished, because what happens in life? We get hit hard. 2020 happens, life happens, we forget ourselves. And it's so good to have something to go back to and say, hey, and I love Jen's example earlier when she was talking about, hey, when I took this risk here, wow, look how it turned out. Man, look at how many great things I got out of this. Okay, maybe I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this, but maybe if I do this or I tweak this, or maybe there's a way in which I can kind of minimize the risk. So there's so many different things, but confidence is the key. And when you have confidence, people can pick it up. I always like to think of people like sharks, and I don't like to dispel sharks, obviously with a marine biology background, because I think they get a bad rap. But, when there's blood in the water, people can smell it. It's kind of like a shark. They can kind of sense. And when you don't have that confidence, people can pick that up. They can sense it. And if you have to have competency, which a lot of people do not lack competency, they lack the confidence for their competency. People want that external look that shows, hey, yeah, I can do it. I can't do this, that, and that, but I'm really good at this, and I can help you with this. That is what people want. And when they see that in your personal brand and it shows forth, it really helps give them the assurance that they're with the right person and that you can help meet their needs. So with confidence, how does it show up? Can you articulate who you are? Can you talk about what you do and what you stand for? How are you showing up? That external part of confidence, your packaging, the way you hold your body language, the way you speak, the eye contact, all of that's really important. And I love to harp on the way you talk about yourself. Forgive me, but again, it is just, sorry, it's just part of what I do for a living, so I can't help it. So here I want to kind of give, and I know I'm watching the time, and we have one more thing to look at, but I want to take a quick pause, because we're not going to jump into your business and all that other stuff now. That's for you, and this is for you to process. And of course, I'm here if you need that added help, please reach out. But let's make this personal, because that's where your branding starts. It starts personal. Do you have kind of a personal anthem for yourself? Something that you can show personal ownership of who you are and what you're extremely good at. Because it's so important, again, the self-talk, what you say about yourself and what you come to believe about yourself, it really does make a difference in what you present yourself to be and how concrete that is for not only yourself, but the way in which you impact people. So here, let's do a quick little exercise. And this is not to put anybody on the spot. This is a safe place. If you feel comfortable, I want you to think in terms of answering this if you have a hard time doing it, because this is that who you are piece that most of us A lot of people don't get to spend a lot of time cultivating because we're so busy in the what I'm doing. And darn right, you're busy in the what you're doing. You're trying to keep your light bill on. You're trying to make sure you can make payroll. You're doing all these things. But remember, don't lose track of yourself, the personal side, the personal branding. So who feels comfortable enough to kind of step up and say this, kind of give their personal anthem? And the way this kind of goes is, I am a blank. Wait, I am, so it might be a, drop the A. So I am adjective, noun, who is brilliant at then what you do. So for me, I will just use myself as an example. I am a creative and analytical problem solver who is brilliant at unpacking people and seeing their gifts and helping them strategize and build a brand, monetize their gifts. Something like that. Doesn't have to be fancy smancy, but again, start with yourself. What is a word to describe what you're really good at or who you are? So your adjective describes you now. We all remember that from school. And then what are you extremely brilliant at? And say that and own it, because people want to feel that from you. Okay. I just advanced this. I saw a chat and I know we're coming up on time. Excuse me. Sorry. Let me see if I can pull the chat back up. Okay. We have some comments here. I see what do you think about? Oh, okay. I will definitely address that. Jen had a really good question I missed earlier. That I'll address about confidence. While you're, anyone have a personal anthem they want to interject? And I'm going to go back to Jen's confidence question. Anybody? And even if you don't have the what you're brilliant at, or you can do one or the other. You can talk about what you do.
So I think it's Jen again. I'm struggling with the adjective. Like I've got multiple nouns. I've got multiple things that I'm brilliant at, right? But I'm stuck on the adjective. So I'm like, I'm a connector, I'm a coach, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm all these things, right? And I'm really good at raising money. I'm really good at making connections for people that can move their business forward. I'm good at, really kind of understanding somebody's business from at a, like, having a meeting with them at a very high level and then being able to break it down into really like minutia as to, okay, these are the next steps you have to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm stuck on the adjective. Got stuck on the adjective.
And I love that, Jim, because that is the sticky place. And if you think about it, if I offered you cake, if I said, hey, Jen, have some cake, first thing you're gonna think is, what kind of cake are we talking about? Then if I say, oh, Jen, this is some moist cake, or Jen, this is very buttery cake, or Jen, this is like, just a hint of sweetness cake. Adjectives really make all the difference, but that it's a stomper. It really is. We can know what we do, but it's that adjective that really allows you to differentiate. And when you get really fancy, you can find multiple string of adjectives that says, I am a blank, 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 blank noun, who can. So no, and this kind of goes back, and thank you so much for saying that, Jen. This goes back to today, your homework is definitely ask some people, like, what words would you use to describe me? And then, it might be, like, you're a spitfire this, or you are a laser focused this, or you are kind and deeply heartfelt at this. But allow to hear back what other people sense and feel from you. If you're authentically putting yourself out there to the world, trust me, the world has an answer. And then I say after that, definitely for anyone that just kind of on the fence and don't know, definitely get that type of coaching. And again, I'm here to help, where it allows you to actually put that adjective there to help you describe, because it's so important to be able to say that. And I know it took me years to be like, because I was just like, oh, well, I do stuff everybody else does. And it's like, no, you don't. I was like, you don't see your gifts? No, they don't. And it's like, oh, shoot, I can do something other people can't. Every single person here and every person listening can do things other people can't. And that adjective is one of the ways to really help differentiate that more. I love that. So definitely take a screenshot of this and make this kind of a fun project today. It's like, I'm going to find that word. And then again, don't just stop there, go deeper, because that's what really will. I've found that, especially when I work with clients, that it's the deeper dive that really opens up the avenues. It's like an underground cave system. I had the pleasure of running down to, I was in Carlsbad, New Mexico a couple years ago. And just look, I was on top of the surface, but when I went underground, it is crazy the amount of caves that are under there and interconnecting chambers. That's the same thing with ourselves. When we actually go beneath the surface, there are so many different things. And when you unpack that, that's actually what opens the door for opportunities. So when people really struggle with finding what are my opportunities, or should I do this or should I do that, oftentimes that's a sign that maybe you haven't really explored the breadth of those caves to have the assurance to know what's really down there that you're working with. So I hope this has been really interesting doing this part. And then last but not least, and this is fun, and again, be patient with yourself. Don't push yourself. We're evolving. And what's neat is I think you're going to love the feedback you get, because that's going to allow you to see yourself a little bit different and maybe even remind you of things that you didn't realize before. You're working with some pretty cool tools. And just kind of put a final analogy on that, and not to beat it to death, the idea, but if you think about it, anytime you have to build something, it's the lumber and all that, the materials are great, but materials are no good without tools. And really, it is your tools that will determine what you can build. A hammer and a nail might tell me, oh, okay, I might be able to put a picture up. But if you pull in one of those like JCB like tractors and some other stuff, looks like mama's clearing some ground, and look, we might be able to build some big stuff. So keep in mind, your tools are so important. Okay, and then last but not least, I like to kind of dilute this down a little bit, because people get really kind of stiff neck when we talking about ourselves and then talking about what we do. And I understand that pressure, but I like the idea, there's communication, but let's think about communication in terms of conversation. That's why authenticity matters so much, because the conversation, if you're struggling in your arena, your marketplace, think about the kind of conversation you have and I love that Jen's sitting outside. If I was sitting next to Jen in the Adirondack chair and we were sipping lemonade, our conversation would be relaxed and we would be talking about things and it would just flow. Why can't you have conversations like that in your marketplace? Now, mind you have to have, of course, the professionalism. You don't be too relaxed there. Don't come in a t-shirt, half, all that good stuff. Just bring the professionalism all around, but it's a conversation. And conversations are easily had when you know you're talking to the right people. If someone from NASA comes and decides to have a conversation with me about some kind of quantum physics and stuff like that, I'm like, look, it's wrong field. Just glaze over look. I'm not going to get anything they're saying. Sorry. So it's important when you're talking to your target, it's like, oh yeah, Kate, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Connections are being made there. And then it gives you an opportunity to see, okay, there's a challenge. Now I can step in, offer, and serve. Because selling, I love when people can shift it. Selling really is serving. So in the conversation, here are some useful strategies, of course. You want to think about your target audience, of course, where to find them, and you want to be specific. Because if you walked into a room and you yelled, a room full of people, and you yell, hey, you, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get the response you think. Some people might look, some people might not, some people are just going to ignore you. But if you walk into a room and you know your target audience and you can call them, you will get a response back. Build authentic relationships. Going back to that know, like, or trust thing. Connecting with people. Don't connect with people just to make connections and get things out of them. Connect with people to serve, or even see ways in which you can leverage each other's abilities or ways in which you can help make their job easier. Someone pitched me today, it was funny, a girl I didn't even know, and she jumped in my inbox and became a Facebook friend. And I kind of admired it. I was like, well, way to go with your boldness. You don't even know me, but she was like, hey, I have something, I think you might want it. And even though it's probably a little better to generate a little bit of a relationship, but what's neat is that people have problems. And if I'm in the middle of a problem, I don't have all day to think about how I'm going to solve that problem. And if you come with the solution to my problem, I appreciate you. You're not doing me a disservice. You're helping me. But if we haven't had a conversation and we're not interacting, then it can make me wonder, who is this person? Is she reputable? Does she just, all that good stuff. And then, of course, the biggest thing is learning your style of communication. Oftentimes, the communication doesn't land properly because people don't know their style. What is it about the way you talk or the way you converse or connect is captivating? How do you stay more in that vein versus trying to be someone else and use their abilities? I have very calm and quietly confident clients. And sometimes they get nervous. They're like, well, no one's going to hear me. And we look at we actually analyze their personality. We look at components they have. And it's like, oh, you communicate all the time. This is how you do it. Do it in a way that's you. So it's so important to know. And it's not just one plane of communication. You communicate by the way your body language, the way you talk, so many different ways. It's important to get your strategy together. And then, of course, remember your online and offline communication opportunities and take advantage of those. And I know we're a little bit at the hour and I want to open up a little bit of time for speaking, but if you want to connect, and I have a freebie, I think it's a brilliant brand checklist for anybody that's interested, definitely, if that's okay. This is a great way to continue the conversation if you're interested afterwards. But if anyone have any questions, that concludes my talk on how to know if you need a tune-up or not. Hopefully this talk has really helped you see where you stand, what is the state of your personal brand, and then gave you some great insights to buff up that vehicle of yours that you have that is amazing as you are, and to use it to get you to your destination.
Thanks, Victoria. It was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And any questions for anyone? And there's no, as I learned in research science, there's no question, no dumb questions. The one you don't ask. It's the bad one. Any questions?
Did you answer my question about faking it till you make it?
I did not. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good question. And I've always been torn about that one. I think it depends on, let's see, I want to make sure I quote that right. Your question says, okay, what do you think about fake it to make it related to confidence? So I leave that up to people. I think fakery is a very interesting thing. I think there's degrees of it. I think sometimes so let's look at it this way. Clothing in a way is soft armor. When you're not feeling your best sometimes, if you put on a certain outfit, it helps you to project, put your best foot forward. That's not faking anything. You're just using an element to help enhance and to fill in the gaps. I don't think there's a bad thing in a sense of putting yourself out there, self-talk, kind of pushing it a little bit, maybe not being all the way there, because none of us are usually all the way there, but kind of putting enough out there where it's that fake it till you make it mentality until you actually feel confident in that space. Because I think if you didn't do that, most of us wouldn't even push forward. I think it becomes problematic when it's all you lead with and it really causes you to be inauthentic, and you're not taking the time one doesn't take the time to really excavate and get clear on themselves. They just decide they want to have this facade. I want to come off as super confident woman, no holds barred. No one's going to talk to me any kind of way. I am a dynamo. I am, doing this, that, and that. And then we kind of give into this persona, and then that really can take us off the path and make it difficult for us to create an authentic personal brand that really would help us leverage more. So I think for starters, it's like training wheels. But you don't want to see a 40-year-old person with training wheels. It's awkward. So I hope that answers that.
So I like that you talk about authenticity because I could be wrong, but I feel like in the work world, it sometimes can be hard for us. Like we have that professional mode, and then we have the at home mode, right? Those lines have kind of been blurred, at least like when it comes to how you dress and how you present yourself because of remote work. But I can't remember where I saw, but I was reading a study that people don't perform well when they work if they don't feel like they can be themselves. They report like higher unhappiness in life in general. So I think that's a really interesting point. And are we still on? My computer is being funny. So
yes, I just stopped the share so people could actually see my face.
I see that, but mine's been like slow. The video is really slow and delayed. But yeah. So I wanted to harp on that a little bit because I feel like it's so important, and it can be difficult sometimes. Like I feel like I can be myself at work, but sometimes we're on a lunchtime topic, so I put on this hat, and I don't know, like I guess you answered a lot of these questions, but if you're struggling with kind of getting out of that mentality of like, I do this, so I have to be this way at work, or my profession is in this, and this is the way I have to be. What are your recommendations? Because, there's some people that like, if you work in a bar, obviously that's a whole different authenticity than somebody who has to put on a suit and tie every day and go talk to clients. So I guess my question is, and if anybody's watching this, for somebody who's in a role and they just feel like they can't be themselves, because I've been in those roles in the past, what do you kind of suggest on getting to that point where they feel like they can be themselves?
That is look, that is the question above questions. I think for me, I think the first place to start is to ask, and this is not trying to create too much disruption, but sometimes it's asking the question is if you're in the right role. So it's so important to kind of look at, and not in the sense of kind of what you were mentioning, but for someone that's have an extreme form where they're like, it doesn't matter what I do, I show up, I just don't feel like I fit. Oftentimes that's a fundamental fit that shows that internally the way you're wired doesn't really connect with your environment. You want to make sure that the way that in which you are wired and the way in which you see your values, all these things and elements are important to you, that you're in an environment that really can help cultivate that. And sometimes it's like the whole idea of being a fish out of water. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm trapped. I'm in the wrong place. Mm-hmm. And I think that really goes back to what Einstein said. Einstein says that, you know, a fish that's trying to climb, I'm really going to mess this up, but everyone's a genius. And that if you're a fish, you know, of course, trying to climb a tree, you're going to think you're not, because you're not obviously in the water where you should be. So sometimes, for one, being in the right place where you can really be yourself authentically. And then below the surface of just like the extreme sense, how do you become more of yourself in your environment? Because sometimes we are just in environments where we have to make them work. I think it really comes down to two things. It's knowing yourself. So it's that self-development part, knowing what it is that you want and how you can use your environment to leverage that. And then knowing, again, that practicing mindfulness, because oftentimes our brain plays tricks on us. You know, you could be completely fine, functioning fine, but your mind is telling you, oh, you know, you're just so awkward today, or you're just so this, or you're just so that, or that you just don't fit well. And because you're kind of being self-detrimental, it really negatively colors the environment. I really do think people can grow in almost any environment if they know, again, what tools they have and what they can leverage, and they're comfortable with putting themselves out in that way. And then advice number 3 would be make the insides match the outside. So one thing about dressing is very interesting is that, you know, of course, certain decorums for certain environments, you want to look the part, but sometimes we rush for that and then it doesn't feel right for us. There's a version, of course, of showing up in an environment. You can be professional, but that can translate a lot of different ways. So I think really being tapped into the nuances of yourself. I struggled with this when I left research science. I was like, how do I show up in my new arena? It's like, okay, I got to wear shoulder pads. Oh, that didn't work. That didn't even feel right. Okay, well, maybe I need to do this. And it's like, oh my God, it really was Goldilocks. It's like, oh God, the bed's too hard. It's like, oh, wait, I went too far. It's too soft. And then I had to find, like, who is Victoria? Like, what makes me happy? And clothing is a huge part of expressing ourselves. So I tell people, don't dismiss that. You want to find that. So of course, like working with a professional to help you, first of all, be clear internally, and then having that person help you translate what you really want to feel and how you want to feel and communicate externally. I hope that answers your question.
It is. I think it's interesting that you point that out, because I feel I wrote an article recently on Focus Lab, who is a company in town, and they hire and fire by their core values. Like they said, these are our core values, and we're looking for people with these core values themselves. And they, like, one of their core values is be yourself, because they know that people who aren't tend to not love their jobs and not stay in them very long. So I just asked that. That's something that I'm really passionate about in general, because I'm one of those people that when I started out working at a really young age, I was like, man, I'm not happy in this whatever job I'm in. And it took me figuring out, like, what are my values and how do they line up with what I'm doing, and telling myself it's okay to not be happy in a job and try to, like, force my square self in, you know, a round hole or whatever. Maybe it's your round, well, you know what I mean, square peg and round hole. I'm getting it back. I wouldn't get it backwards. But anyways, thank you for answering that. And it is past 1. I don't want to hold you past your time, but I'm happy to stay on if, Lou, you have questions, or Victoria, if you have time too.
Oh, I have time to entertain any question. And Lou, hi. I didn't get to say, I think I said hi to Lou Oh, hi.
Yeah, I've been sorry, I've been listening with rapt attention. My mind just goes everywhere. I was like, oh no, I can be that, I can't be that, I can't do that. But
I didn't mean to call you out either. I thought I'd just ask if you. I don't want to close out if you saw questions.
Yeah, no,
I love your backdrop. Oh my gosh. Oh, just makes you want to jump on a plane. I love it.
Yeah, it's a Buddhist temple in southern coastal China. So
It's
I
beautiful.
was there in 2017. Yeah.
But no, any questions I'm here for. And in relation to that, and I love that you said about the value part, because I think people tend to feel very guilty about deciding what they want for themselves. And I feel like that's part of one of the things I'm really out to help change, because when you feel like you can be a deciding factor in what your future looks like, and you're not just settling for everything that comes at you, and you have a strong enough self-image to reach for the things you want, it really does change how you show up. So I think what you mentioned, but I love that company to have that mindset and share that there's certain values that we want and we want to uphold. I think that's very noble, and I think most people should do that for themselves, because it does change the way you show up and the way in which you project. So I think that's so important.
Yeah, I think we often forget that, and we think I've talked to so many people lately who are like, I've got it, like a job is just to like survive and put food on the table. And I'm like, well, no, your job is actually your life, and you should enjoy doing it. And if you're not feeling it and you're not thriving there, and the company's not thriving with you there, then something's wrong. So
Yeah. Yeah. Don't try to shove a puzzle. We play puzzles all the time, and we know that puzzle piece that doesn't fit. You try to get it in there and it doesn't, in like the corners. I don't know why we try to tend to do that ourselves in our own lives. We just want to, because we know we're throwing the entire picture of our life off by putting that piece in. It's like, no, that piece belongs somewhere else. Maybe you belong somewhere else.